Hello and welcome again for today's stream. Today I thought I could show how I've been painting these space consoles. These very glossy, finished like space decks. These are probably my favourite thing to paint at the moment, so figured I would have a go at showing that off in stream and get another nice bit of time-lapse footage. Excuse me. Yesterday we painted this vampire, which someone called a BDSM vampire, so I'm not quite sure about that. But he does look very pretty nasty, like a pretty nasty guy, so I think that went quite nicely. But he's obviously not very finished. This is a lot more like just a rough sketch. I think I spent about 1 hour on it. We're probably going to end up spending a bit more time. I want to on this on whatever we end up painting on this page today. So excuse me. Sorry, it's pretty early. It's not early, but it's early for me. So yeah, we'll have a go at painting that. Turn the home screen off. All right. Here we are again. And again, I got to kind of juice a design out of my brain. I want something where there's kind of two domes. Oh, sorry, where there's kind of two domes that you like control the equipment with, or maybe like two handles. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, I'm just gonna walk through how I do this. So we start off with a sketch. Everything's the same brush. I always use the same brush pretty much. Now all of these have a screen on them so far. Let's see which ones we've designed already. Yeah, I can see a niche that we're missing, right? Not sure if I've already designed one like this actually, but here we go. I want something with a big dome-like screen. Maybe have it facing the camera just a bit more. Should be bulging out more too even. But yeah. Big dome-like screen, and I want it to kind of split into two parts at the front. The controls. And maybe it has another extra screen here. Could also have some vents. Something like that, I'm not sure. And these always have quite a... You see, everything's kind of organically shaped, but also a lot of these have a big, chunky base. And I do this kind of cutout here, just so, you know, people's feet have somewhere to stand. Yeah, something like that is indeed what I had in mind. You can do some contour lines as well, and not a bad idea here. I think this should just display like a number or an icon kind of thing, some kind of symbol on that top screen. So yeah. think that's pretty good. That's one of my fastest designs. Let me get some music on. Sorry, my dog just shivered. And his ears flapping against his bed. Oh. My earphone didn't connect. Oh. Yeah, I'm not sure what material I'm going to use for the big dome screen that's on this machine, but we'll see. This is really just me kind of demoing how these reflective materials are done anyway. Sorry, these earphones are super buggy lately. I don't think they make contact with the things in the case. Give me 1 sec, let me make these connect. There you go. Didn't want to play ball for some reason. Alright. I might do another design. I want something really like, you know what I mean? Let's do another design or two just to make sure we've got the best one we could have. I did want something with kind of an even more organically shaped dome. Like this in 2 parts merged together, you know what I mean? Like more like that shape, maybe even with a 3rd bump in the middle. So it's kind of like that. It's quite a cool design for one, I feel like, as well. I want it to feel like our CRT monitors and oscilloscopes have this big, you know, like area behind where the beam gets shot. Yeah, I don't know why I find it so easy to to make nice designs for these things lately, and I feel like I'm struggling with everything else as well. So my brain just wants to draw these machines. Might as well just go with the flow. It's a pretty nice design, I feel like, that one as well. Maybe give it not so much of a snail's foot. I want something with a few screens, or with a very interesting shaped screen. A little bit like this one. See, it's got a very like very complicated shaped screen there, but it just looks nice. And this one's got that top screen too, just for displaying a few digits or something. There are other ways though. I mean, this one's got like the clear dome. And of course this one doesn't have a screen at all, it's more like HMD. You look into the bit more like a microscope design, that one. Do you wonder what material I'm going to go for today as well? I think this ended up being one of my favourite materials. Just love how this one turned out, so milky and soupy. Turned out really nice. So yeah. Kind of treating myself today, painting these, painting exactly what I want to paint. I've been wanting to paint like the ghouls and goblins and stuff for a while. I don't know how. I mean, the vampire yesterday was nice, but maybe I didn't spend enough time on it. I'm not sure. I'm not sure. Or it might be just a little bit too small. You know, a little bit too pixelated. I could have made him larger. Not sure. But I mean, when you look at these aren't very big at all. That's like very pixelated, right? So, and when you grow them, they look just fine. I'm not sure. We'll come back to the ghouls. I want to paint something a little bit more when I do the ghouls and goblins and stuff. Where is he? It pops up every now and then in the below my picture. The kind of guardian of the door. The green one, the green dude. I want to paint more like that. But I want to do that. I want to do some quick sketches like that. Not quick, well, you know what I mean, like speed paintings, some sketches. I don't know what to call them. I'm not sure about that one. I don't know where that one's going. What if the screen was kind of wrapped around something? Like that. That's pretty cool, I think. Be like a tiny stand as well. Let me just draw a person. It might help me to get the scale of it right. Looks too much like a person. I like that design. I think I'm gonna go with this one. I think this one's still my favourite. I'll probably end up doing all of these. I don't know why. I just love doing these things right now. I'm gonna do, because I can never figure out what I want to do with the sketch layer. I'm just gonna duplicate that how it is and hide it, and then paint on top of the sketch. I just like my sketch layer and my paint layer to be the same layer, so that way I can just rub out the bits that I don't need and incorporate the bits that I do. Right, what colour? Thinking blue. A proper baby blue with maybe some white accents on it. I tried to give it... So, I tried to give these... I'll draw a few more contour lines for you guys as well. I do recommend for anyone trying to do similar to this, the contour lines are the way you want to go with any of these organic forms. It'll help you recognize what the middle is as well. I'm not going to do those. I'm not going to go crazy with them. So yeah, we're just going to pick some kind of blue color for it. I'm thinking where the lighting should be as well. I kind of want the lighting to just be coming, from a pretty basic area. And the way I paint, it's straight in, right? So I'm not gonna. I think most people, the way they'd think this goes is, I paint the whole thing in blue, and then I start to kind of work from there, and layer on top of that, or make a clipping mask or whatever. No, it's not how we work. We go straight in, as realistic as possible. We paint. This is painting. We're picking colours and putting them on. It's like we'd have to do with oil. And it may seem more difficult, but you'll be all the better off for it, because it's just you end up using your actual understanding, and you've got more control that way. You can see we've got quite bright blue up on front here, where the light's going to be hitting quite strongly. And it only has to start simple. And it's pretty simple as well. We're just going in this diagonal pattern, and it's getting more violet as it gets darker. I'm just thinking, it's still matte at the moment. Really, it's not even really reflective. You see there, I glazed a little bit just to get a different value, and then color picked that value. Something nice about digital. You've got so many breaks in digital that you might as well just go in and do it properly, right? You can see we're pretty quickly building this out. I want to try and get it a little bit darker in some of these areas. Part of making things look reflective is having a lot of contrast between the areas, between the light and dark areas. I'm thinking about how the floor is going to be reflecting some light up on the bottom of this chin here, so I don't want to make it too dark. But we'll see how it goes. That often makes this kind of core shadow Terminator effect, where you've got the bright part where the light's hitting, and then you've got core shadow in the middle, and then you've got where it gets bright again underneath with the reflective light, and you get this kind of Terminator light line, like I was saying. And that, if I expand this a little bit for you guys, you can see that that's actually the typical material ball that we all learn when we learn the fundamentals. I can blur that and make it even more obvious for you. There you go, you see that's just like the basic material ball, if that makes sense. I don't know whether to make these vents or I might make them actual like metal pads, which would be like heat transfer pads maybe. I don't know. I try not to think about the function of these machines too much because just the way my brain is wired, I'll end up overthinking about it and not doing any work. And you can see it's very rough at the moment. I don't want to use the blending brush yet because I want to be able to see where my values are. As soon as you use that blending brush, it makes it more difficult to see what's where. I wanted a white stripe. Yeah, I like that. So I just tried to kind of match the values the way it gets darker as it goes further back there. And that's going to be in the paint job, so that's going to be like underneath the varnish, underneath the gloss. Again, when I paint these glossy objects, I'm really thinking about like car paint, you know. But currently it's more like clay. Try and sneak some really high saturation as well is part of the goal, because my paintings can often end up being a bit bland saturation wise, so it's just a bit of an initiative from me to try and, you know, keep them colourful, keep them bright, because my paintings often end up dark and moody. Going pretty well so far, so happy with it. I think this is going to be a pretty nice demo for just demonstrating how this is done. Because I don't know if there's anyone else painting glossy objects like this, you know, that are this glossy, you know, and like organically shaped. I think especially for anyone trying to paint cars or vehicles, probably really good skill set to have. And I'll show you guys how to like make it look, you know, really very reflective, where there's lots of, let me show you even. I'll show you how to make it, you know, where you see there's loads of different glints and light sources all over this. It's not just you know, it's not just the one light source. Even if you look here, you see all of these little glints here. Especially on ones like this one. I mean, just look how many light sources there are that's reflecting. Almost just looks like an abstract piece of art until you zoom out, and then you can read. You can see that there's actually something encoded in there, right? And if you want to learn how to do that, I very much recommend watching my lighting tutorial first. It's not the best tutorial. I need to like I plan to redo all of those kind of tutorials. And I plan to redo them many times and get them slowly and slowly better. So they're currently at their worst stage, but My lighting tutorial does explain how to do those glints, and I'll be probably explaining again today as I paint this. Now, how do we render the screen is a good question to be asking right now. Do I go with the typical green glass? Go with some purple. Yeah, let's go with the green. Green just looks too good. And we're going to render this exactly like we did for the paint on the actual thing itself. It's going to be pretty easy because this is just, a lot of people might recognize this again as just a material ball. We're just doing a green glass material. Got a pretty good idea of what this thing's going to look like now, you see. It's going to look pretty good, I think. I don't like the controls very much at the moment though. I could make it like just, I've been thinking about like a concave trackpad lately. And that would, it would be a nice excuse to put some steel, some very reflective steel there. Yeah, we'll go with that. Show you how to do, this is going to be like completely reflective, polished. Steel's often blue-grey. It takes the saturation out of stuff because it blurs it all together. At least from afar. You gotta think, this is a really hard one to explain, and I didn't explain this in my lighting video, I realised the other day, but if you have a mirror somewhere, if you look at the reflection in the mirror, it's sharp, right? To your eyes, I mean even, or to a camera, anything that focuses. If you look at the reflection in the mirror, it's sharp. But if you look at the wall that the mirror is mounted on, you're not focusing. You've got to think, when you look at the thing in the mirror, you're looking through the mirror, or the focus of your eye is further than the mirror, right? Because you're looking past the mirror, through into the mirror, and into what the mirror is reflecting, right? So your eyes are like bouncing back. And it's double the distance, right, that you're having to focus on. But if you look at the wall next to the mirror, everything in the mirror will go blurry, even to your eyeballs, if you just look at the wall next to the mirror, because you're not focused on the things, you're not focused far away enough, right? So, depending on the focus, even mirror polished reflective things can look blurry as if they were more of a satin finish. It's a tough one to explain. And this is concave too, so. And like I said, reflective things have more contrast, so I've gone really dark here. And you see that that's made it look more reflective than before. When there's low contrast, it doesn't look very reflective, but as soon as you add that, you know, really strong contrast on there. And you see I've gone dark at the top because it's concave. And it's going to be reflecting, you know, going to be reflecting the light source more on the bottom here. The light's coming at the machine, it's more likely to hit that bottom surface. It's not really going to be hitting that top surface, that's just going to be reflecting the floor. I like the dark gasket sealing it in, I think that looks nice. And you see these things end up so smooth and perfect in the end, but they start off so rough and, like I said, like more like clay. Although you can see when you zoom out, it starts to work, right? And again, we're going for like automotive paint kind of look. Really, really polished and waxed automotive paint. I think I want this to be darker and more saturated. I'm just going to glaze over it. I want it to be really saturated down here. Nice, there you go. Now it's gonna have like you know, the reflections are gonna be somewhere up here generally. I think it needs to be even darker. It often helps to make things look reflective as well, I've noticed. There's not very rarely a light source coming from the camera, coming from us. So when you get a reflective ball like this, let me show you on these even. When you get like a reflective rounded surface like this, you see the middle is quite dark, and then it's the outsides that catch the light. I don't know if this one's as much like it. This one more the bottom's dark, but it makes things look nicer and reflective when you make the... You've got to think the camera's looking at this spot in the middle, and there's not really much light coming from the camera's area itself. Typically the camera's in a darker area of the room, so... See how much more shiny that makes the screen look? And how much more convincing that is. Just making that center part where the camera's looking directly at a lot darker. I don't think there's many people teaching those simple rules like that. We're going to incorporate that a little bit in the other areas as well, now that I've remembered. The goal here now is just to make this look a little bit shinier and shinier. We're just perfecting it now, really. Before we, well, it'll probably... I'm not sure whether we'll do it all in one go or whether it'll slowly get more and more smooth. Excuse me. I might at some point show you guys the most basic one as well. This kind of console. I might paint another one of this kind. This is like the default, in my opinion. This kind of a white ceramic one. This was the original. There you go. That was the original one that started it all. This kind of identity. I imagine this is in some sort of video game to open a door or something, and you put your hands on it and it sees whether you're the right person. Something like that, I don't know. But yeah, that was the OG. This was the OG page that started all of my reflective paintings that I've been on lately. I've really been on a roll with them. But they all start like this, looking quite matte, quite a lot like clay. We slowly make them smoother and more reflective looking. And then it's towards the end where I add, like, you know, an unholy amount of specular reflections. And that's what really makes them pop. Just going overboard with those speculars. Yeah, I'll leave these as holes because I like the contrast and I think they look cool against the white stripe. Pretty nice design, right? I feel like this one's quite a short one. The person using it would kind of be on it like that and looking down at it, you know. Might tilt my camera down just a little bit more. There you go. I hunch over so badly when I'm painting. Often you'll only see my forehead on the camera. This is a bit too basic now, but we'll figure it out. A pretty good space right now. I don't know whether it's time to start bringing out the blur brush. It needs to look pretty much perfect when we zoom out. Need to really want to bring it in. I should have to show you how something a bit more like this one as well, because this one I rendered differently. This one, a lot of these kind of baked in when I painted it, a lot of the reflections and stuff. This one, by the way, I don't know if I can show you guys how to paint this one, because this one was like, I was in flow state, you know what I mean? That one I was just like understanding, you know? Could have painted anything that day and it would have turned out nice. Sometimes you just get a good, you know what I mean, a good painting and it clicks with you, and that was one of them for me. Make that darker maybe even. Remember, these little rim lights will often make things look nice. Not rim lights, but you know, like if there's even in these cutouts, right, you got to think the bottom of them is going to be a bit brighter because it's kind of catching more light, sort of thing. We'll probably end up doing that with them later and doing a bit better of a job. I like to think of this black area that I'm painting right now as kind of like a rubber gasket. Add in just a bit We're getting a bit brighter now with some of these highlights. You can see it's starting to get a little bit shinier as we expand the values. You can see the highlights are getting caught in pretty geometric areas. So these areas where it's bulging out the most, that's where it's like catching the light, because the light's very much in the middle. I'm always trying to do donut shapes, round shapes. They look good. That's why everyone likes those ring lights. Well, I like to use them in my paintings for more futuristic stuff to give it more of a shiny look. Maybe we can add a bit of a secondary light as well. Stronger secondary light. Not sure. Just trying things out. So yeah, I'm trying this really saturated blue for the reflective light on the bottom there. Might make it look nice. This is going to be a dark spot right there. Well, damn, you see how much more reflective that area looks now that I just added all that contrast and some of that saturation. It's all just that simple pattern though. I think right here is going to be a bit of a dark patch too. Everywhere where it's really facing the camera, we're going to make those some pretty dark areas. Here it might be a bit too bright, a bit too much light catching on the top of there for it to be a dark spot. And the dark spots are going to be super saturated too. We're just trying to work in as much saturation as we can everywhere. Pretty much. As much as we can reasonably get away with, we're trying to sneak in. And that's really, that's all there is to it. I don't know if I like how the stand looks now that I've done that. You see, I keep zooming out. I want it to look good from far away. That is deceptively dark right there. It's good when you can't quite tell the value just by looking at it and you're colour picking. You're a bit surprised by the value it actually is. We're really going for a lot of contrast, so the dark values next to the bright values. That's part of what makes reflective materials so difficult as well, because usually, especially as a beginner, doing these high contrast areas looks bad, right? It's tough to manage contrast as it is, let alone when you're trying to cram more contrast into small, tight areas. So we haven't broke out the blur brush quite yet. And really, you could do the whole thing without the blur brush. It's just to hide the brush strokes, really. But it is kind of important for these because you really do want to hide the brush strokes. And just wow, and you'll see what I'll show you now. Even I might undo it. I don't think I want to use the blur brush yet, but just have a look at the speed of a difference this makes. Just wild. Makes things look instantly more glossy and smooth. And that's what we're kind of working towards. But right now we want the brush strokes because we want to be able to see what we're doing. Alright, how do we make this more interesting? And more like an actual control area. Could put a big bright red button in it. Again, I'm trying not to think too much about the usage. Maybe I should bring back the 2 buttons that were there originally. I don't like it. I think that's a bit better. Trying to keep, I think the design language of these like space consoles looks better when you keep it simple and keep the materials simple. So adding like loads of different materials and buttons and stuff, I think it can make it look less retro and more futuristic. These are very retro futuristic. A lot of the inspiration for these paintings comes from like old workshop tools, you know, like old drill presses and stuff from 1930s and 40s, and those all have like, you know, big smooth cast iron casings, and that was really a big part of the inspiration for me designing these. It's kind of like the future thought of that, and you've got to think all those old like drill presses and mills that have those really smooth designed retro designed like cast iron cases. This is like they're very solid and sturdy, and I like that. I kind of was thinking, you know, what's that going to be like when you really pump up the futurism part of that, and it turns out it's like very similar but even more smooth and organic shapes and less unnecessary features, so it's trimmed down and really shiny glossy paint jobs, glossy finishes, lots of lacquer and clear coat type finishes too, not just like not just paint, but you know, paint and then a clear shiny, you know, not completely smooth coat over it. A bit like nail varnish texture, if that makes sense, where it's all kind of like a little bit wavy. There's a lot of material design that goes into this sort of stuff. Definitely should have made this one a little bit bigger before I started working on it, but it's okay. make the gasket a little bit thinner. So I've already started doing some of these little specular reflections, little loops and such. Might do this one next. I really like the look of this one. I don't know if I'm going to stick with the handprint controls, or maybe I'll do kind of a bit of an interpretation on it. Might give this one a bit of a trapdoor here, like the microscope one has. Not sure. Just give it a circle there, like an oil refill port or something. Nice to add little bits of details here and there. Always trying different things. Doesn't work. Control Z. Well, I've got it set to just Z, but you know what I mean. Maybe this is one where you kind of pour a liquid into this reflective port. Or I don't know. I guess the idea is that you couldn't really figure out what it's for. I like the idea that if this was ever like, you know, like an actual piece of media, when people are flying the spaceships and using all this equipment, you can see how the spaceship's flying and being controlled by them, but then when you look at the actual ship, you just can't tell what any of them are doing with all these machines. And I kind of like the humor in that. Everything's so cryptic and, you know, it's so alien that you couldn't even imagine how they're using these machines to control the ship. Right then, I'm going to start hiding these brush strokes now then. And this blur brush, it doesn't just blur, but it actually drags and smears as well, which gives me a little bit of a control to actually change shapes. Sometimes that can be a bit of a curse. I've got one that just blurs as well, just the blur filter brush. I really use that one there. Should probably use it a bit more, because sometimes I do struggle with this one smearing too much when I don't want it to. Let me have a look at some of my previous art to see how these things looked. Okay. Yeah, I think we've still got a long way to go. See, I'm smearing it a little bit here, even. Kind of a satin finish on the screen right now, but I'm going for more of a fully glossy finish. It'll look more glossy when we add the speculars. Using the brush very lightly here. I'm just trying to hide the brush strokes and not smear anything like I was talking about a second ago. Although here I want to smear it a bit to make it smoother. See how that paint stripe looks now. Looks quite nice. You can see we try to, a lot of the time with this blur brush as well, work in the actual kind of direction of the contours. See how different that looks now that we've gone ahead and blurred it. I'm going to get rid of these details whilst blurring this part, but that's why you don't do your details too early. Now that we have blurred it, we can use the airbrush a little bit in some areas. As you know, the airbrush, the point of the airbrush is it's the same as the usual brush we use, more or less. But it natively doesn't show brush strokes. I think I've ruined that a little bit. There you go. Try and get some pin lights on there. Pin lights are pretty much going to be very nearly white. See a shape in here. See, we're putting these speculars in straight away. We're not just going to straight whack them in because they don't look perfect like that. You can get them to look better by using the blur brush. And like I explained in my lighting video, you want it to be more blurry where it's more blurry towards the middle of the material ball, if that makes sense, and sharper towards the edges. Be blurry towards the middle of the dome, and when it reaches right on the edges, that's where it's really sharp. See, it's looking pretty nice now, and those were just random shapes. I tried to keep them circular. Oh. Oh man, one of the best things about painting or drawing is a good excuse to listen to some music in it. And yeah, I'm still in my nightgown. I pretty much just crawled out of bed and straight onto streaming today. I just find it a lot more comfortable in the morning to do it. Otherwise, it's like torture trying to concentrate for some reason. Just give me 2 minutes. I'll be right back. Okay. You see, even with very few pixels, well, it helps us to have fewer pixels. It makes it easier. Not a lot of people know that. Oops, sorry. Just realised I haven't had the mic set up properly. In one set. There you go. Hopefully that hasn't been causing audio problems. The fact that this is... I did like the look of this specular reflection at the start, but you see how it's like drooped downwards? It should be more like these to make it look rounder. It was a bit of I might leave it because I like the... It's like the main reflection, right? And I like that it's different. But if you just want to follow the formula, and I might make it in the end if I don't end up liking it in an hour or so. But typically it's going to be distorted more upwards than downwards. See that even looks a bit more comfortable than that does. No, I'm going to leave it because, like I said, I like that it's different. Oh, all my brushes have changed. Where's my main brush gone? Oh, there you go. Might make these reflections have a more of a green hue to them. Might make things look a little bit better than just the white. Yeah, definitely more greens helping. I like this very bright emerald green here as well. Yeah, I am on the airbrush now. Whoa, how good is that looking now? You see the airbrush kind of leaves these clouds and artifacts. I don't actually think that was the airbrush, but any brush can do it. The airbrush does it a lot more. Leaves kind of a cloud of very faint value outside, and you have to rub it out. Yeah, you see the use of the airbrush right now is going up. It'd be nice if it told you guys. I've got it as like the arrow cursor. You can get a cursor where it shows what tool you are, but I don't think it'll, because the airbrush and the blur brush look exactly the same to you guys. Even I get confused which one I'm using sometimes, because they're both just a circle. Maybe I'll make the brush heads different shapes, just for the sake of making it easier to distinguish them. Oh, you see it's starting to get there with the reflectiveness though. How good is that beginning to look? Sometimes as well, you see we've got this sharp highlight here. It'll help to stretch it along with the form. That sharpest peak on the form. Just make it look more distorted, and see it looks more reflective that way. It's basically all airbrush work right now, by the way. Just because, like I said, the airbrush natively doesn't have brush strokes, so when we're working on smooth stuff like this, that's when the airbrush is useful. Kind of the only time I use the airbrush. Oh, the only other time I use the airbrush is if I need to slightly influence something. So say I want the screen to be a little bit more blue, I can... You know what I mean? Oh, that does actually look quite cool. Makes it look very turquoise, doesn't it? I'm gonna leave it as is though, because I like the kind of green marble effect we've got going on. I think the stand should be brighter. This is jet white, by the way. This is like actual white that I'm using. I'm gonna put some green reflections here as well. not liking them. And yeah, we can get all different colours of little specular reflections if we like. And some purple ones here. And they're all going to stick to the edges, again, like I said in my lighting tutorial. All of these specular reflections, they're really going to like to hang around the horizons, which is basically on an organic form like this, is always going to be the edges. Doing some sharper points inside of these softer reflections as well. Like that. I like to do that, and it makes it look more like it's broken up. You can see a lot of this really is just random. I'm just trying to get things that look right, and most of the things I do I end up erasing again. It's all part of just trying to get that random effect. Get some darker areas in here as well. Sometimes I do these specular reflections with the airbrush as well, just to hide the brush shape. Yeah, this is going to be one of them. See these open areas here where it's all quite blurry? If you do something sharp, it's going to look weird. So here's where you want to do these very subtle, blurry specular reflections instead. And you're trying to play on areas that already kind of look like they might, you know, have that effect in them. Remember, it's going to be, you see I use I'm going to exaggerate it here, but I use a smaller brush here, and then it gets less and less sharp as it comes towards the middle of this organic shape. That's a very exaggerated version, but that is the basic formula here. You can see there, thinner and sharper, wider and more blurred. And I'll blur that even more probably. Still trying to keep it random. Still trying to go on trends that already exist as well. I'm still erasing most of the things I do. I've gone really crazy with the reflections in this area, you can see. I might turn it back, but I do have a bit of a want to leave it because you want it to look, or at least I want this painting to look really out there, you know, like it's more dramatic that way, if that makes sense. I can turn it down just a little bit here with the airbrush. See, the airbrush is good for just killing some contrast. It's just that one that wants to be turned down. See, most of the stuff I do is unsuccessful. I'm just trying random stuff and seeing if it looks good. That's the whole idea behind it, really. Get rid of them, I don't like them. I might cut the snail's foot off even more. You see, there's no need for clipping masks, no need for layers. We didn't... Sorry, I'm mixing up my keys here. We didn't need to paint the whole thing blue and then start doing different transparent layers on top of that. None of that. We went straight in, painted it exactly how we thought it should look. It was rough at first because of the brush strokes. But that was a good thing. Even this paint stroke, was it that much effort to do this paint stroke? Most people probably try and do that paint stroke on like a different layer, right? But no, you don't need to. The beauty of digital, even though you do have the layers, you don't have to use them because it's so malleable. You see how much that does genuinely look like part of the paint job. I think that, especially when you get areas like this where there's a highlight going over both areas of, and this looks really good in eyes as well, when there's a highlight that goes on the white of your eye, but also in this same way is jumping, half of it is on the pupil and half of it's on the white of your eye, because it makes it all look like there's that glossy clear coat surface over it, which there is on your eyes, the like the liquid on your eye. Just one of those little effects that looks so nice. If I can sneak more. There might be some sharper. See, in this little crevice here, where it's really sharp, it's a really sharp bend, and that's actually a lot. And that's another thing I didn't speak about in my lighting tutorial is, along with horizons catching the reflections, you do also get sharp bends. You know, like the corner of a cube will kind of suck the light in and suck those specular reflections in like a magnet as well. Yeah, I'm just trying to go with a random shape, but it's not fully random. I'm trying to show that it's kind of been pulled in there. It's not looking good though. It's not being very successful, but that is something that you'll often see. I think that looks a bit better. I might leave that without those extra features that we had in it earlier. It didn't take us too long to paint this either. About an hour and a half. The thing that I'm finding with these is painting this glossy stuff compared to painting that vampire yesterday. Just because it's easier to paint smooth things and make smooth things look finished than it is less smooth things like that vampire's face. Seeing what things might look like if displayed on the screen, or even like what different shaped glass on the screen might look like. Not sure. Thing about starting with sketches, especially starting with sketches that are just jet black, is they'll end up with the outlines kind of stuck to the borders of the painting, and you gotta kind of come back and try to get rid of them. making the screen even darker a little bit. I think it's time. This blur brush as well, it's a good idea to use very light brush strokes and a lot of them, rather than to try and, I'll show you, if you try and do it, you'll get the sharper edges that you don't want with the airbrush. Sorry, I said blur brush, I meant airbrush. Yeah, I think it's too much contrast. But you can do that kind of bright sparkling about. It might be better on the top even if that runs kind of contrary to what should be there. Might be like the floor is reflecting more light on them. You can just make up whatever rules as you go, really. If it's good enough to fool yourself, then it's probably going to be good enough to fool the audience. Which is why your eye when you're painting is really like quite important. And just seeing whether things look right, you know. Oh man. Oh. Might call it there, you know. That's a pretty quick painting. Just refine some of these edges a bit more. Gotta keep it to a professional standard. Yeah, I'm gonna leave it at that. It's a nice machine, that one. Fine, then should we have a go at the one below it? What colour should we make this one then? I think very light green. I'm gonna have some light on the edges. I'm gonna get more towards blue as it gets darker, more towards turquoise. Probably gonna be pretty dim where it's facing the camera, like I was talking about earlier. I might give this one a bright, deep blue screen as well, like the blue of this paint almost. It's a bit inverse, this one is almost. You can see it's just rough brush strokes right now. So you're just still following this same kind of diagonal. We're getting more saturated as it gets darker naturally, at least to start with. It won't always continue like that. We're trying to, like I said earlier, we really are trying to sneak as much saturation in as possible. Keep the edges of this screen definite. You see the starting, probably the easiest and most fun part of the painting. Most difficult is towards the end when we're trying to work out all those specular reflections without making it look strange, and while still trying to use those specular reflections, because you've got to do so much like calculating in your head of, and you know, eyeballing it, seeing whether things look right. It's already looking pretty good around this area, I feel like. Yeah, and you see we're actually painting this. We're not trying to use some digital tricks or you know, layers, and you know, we're not using different kind of multiply layers and simulate the light here and there and get this transparent layer over it, and then, you know what I mean? It's not complicated. We're just painting it. And that's what a lot of people miss out on digital art. They don't learn how to paint because I feel like people are too busy trying to figure out how to cheat and get around, not cheat, but you know what I mean, like how to use a formulaic approach rather than an organic approach. At the end of the day, you're going to be a better painter if you just learn how to paint, and then developing those formulaic approaches comes after that, right? They don't make it easier, they make it more difficult because everyone paints differently and wants to paint different things. So those formulaic approaches, it's going to be very unlikely that they give you exactly what you want. And you're not going to understand why the formulaic approaches work in the areas that they do work. So just for beginner painters, my advice is learn to paint. Even if you're in digital, learn to paint. right? You see, this is a painting. It's not. I haven't done what most people would probably, or a lot of beginners would probably do, which would be, you know, paint a solid color like this and then try to, you know, modify that solid color afterwards, or make a clipping mask or whatever, you know. And I fell into that mistake when I started so many years, and I didn't get it, and I couldn't learn how to actually just paint. And the second, I swear that I'll have to find it, that I know exactly what piece it was. The first piece where I actually painted, it all made sense instantly. Got easier and easier from there. Just paint regularly with a brush. There's no tricks that are going to make it easier. Well, there probably is for very specific subjects, that, you know, but those are like shortcuts that, you know, artists have worked out because that fits their style. And sure, you can learn it that way, but it won't be easy. Won't be as the easiest way to get really good at painting is to start by just learning to paint. That's what I'm trying to say. Not that you need to, or that you have to learn in any particular way, but if you want to get really good, the easiest way, in my opinion, to learn how to paint normally, learn how to paint in that normal, organic fashion that people have been doing for thousands of years, you know. I would paint this the same way if I was using oil or gouache. And in digital, you get so much malleability, and it helps you so much, especially as a beginner. There's no need to try and find these shortcuts and stuff, because you can't make a mistake in digital. You can always overwrite it. Whatever mistake you make, you can paint over instantly. If I was in oil, this would be a bit more difficult, because you can't just paint over and over and over something as much as you like, as easily as in digital. I can literally do it infinitely in digital with no repercussions. I'll never ruin the surface. Just remember to keep zooming out. That's the one trick you don't want to forget. If you keep zooming out, you'll be much more likely to be successful. I struggle to paint when I'm not zooming out loads. And it doesn't look as zoomed out on it looks zoomed out on the stream, but it's even more. You've got to remember, like, the stream looks slightly blurry on that main panel because it's zoomed in so far. I should get like a higher res monitor so it looks better for you guys, but the size of the painting on my monitor right now is that. Right, that's how large the painting is. That's what that area is on my monitor. Maybe like 4 centimeters, 5 centimeters tall. That's how small I'm zooming it out when I'm looking at it. And zooming in, having a little peek at it. Zoom out again and look and observe and see what needs to be done. Maybe paint on it, zoomed out a little bit. Zoom in and peck at it, you know. Very organic approach. But you'll see, we'll end up with something nice from it. Some of that looks good from far away and from close up. And in the modern age where people are scrolling past your paintings, you know, they're doing that, and it's on a phone screen, it's tiny, you know, not a big monitor. You need people to be able to recognize, read, and relate to your, and believe your painting, you know, instantly. Because otherwise they're just going to keep scrolling past. I mean, you don't need that, no, everyone is trying to get, you know, big on social media or what have you, but it's always nice to have an audience, isn't it? This purple screen's pretty funky. Maybe I should make it like a compound eye on a bug. That makes sense. Because I like that in this universe all of the screens are this green glass. There's a lot of these green glass domes. The purple kind of breaks that. So maybe I should make it behave differently with the light in some sort of way. If you look at like a bug, like the compound eye, it's always like a jet black. Because it's loads of tubes facing out a bug's compound eye is. And if you look straight down the tube, it's like you're looking, it just looks black, right? Because it's absorbing the light most efficiently that way. So when you're looking straight on at that, like if you look at someone's eye straight on, it's just black right inside that circle, and that's what you're looking at with the bug's compound eye. But as soon as it's like tilted view, you see, you know, the light bouncing off and the glare, and all of a sudden it's not black anymore. So you'll see like in macro shots of like grasshoppers and stuff, when you're looking at their compound eye, the part of the eye, it's like how I was saying it's darker where it faces the camera. It's like that times 10 where it's just like black, and you see where the, if ever you see macro video of a compound eye on a bug, when the camera moves around, you see this dark spot move around with it. Interesting effects. Maybe I'll try and pull that off with this screen. Very dark in the middle, you know. A bit like that, isn't it? There you go. So if you imagine that as like a compound eye on the stalk of like some kind of bug. Does that make sense? See how that kind of looks like a compound eye? And sometimes you'll have, I think it's called a pseudo pupil, where it'll actually be, that dark spot will actually be in a specific shape. So you get like a hammerhead shape or something. See how much like a compound eye that's starting to look? I don't know if I'm translating that very well. I'm just talking nonsense anyway. I'm probably not even going to make the screen look like this. Just an interesting thing to talk about. I like unique and interesting visual effects and lighting effects. I hope that makes sense. And it's like, we're the camera looking dead on at this eye, but if we were looking at the eye from the side instead, this dark pupil in the middle would move with our camera. So it would be like there instead. And that's the stalk. I hope that makes sense. And maybe there could be some kind of device where the screen has that effect, that pseudo pupil effect. Visualize, all about little ideas like that and how you can use them to distinguish your art from the crowd. I don't like these sharp edges here. think I'm going to make this shape more rounded like the rest of the stuff. And then I like making all of this stuff more like a shiny silver metal, because I feel like it's more compatible with people touching, you know, the metal. It's a bit more wear resistant and resistant to the oil on people's hands. And I like how it's usually mounted too. I like the idea that because these are all quite organic shapes. I like the idea. Let me show you on another image. I should have before the stream bought these in as reference, really. But you see how it kind of like if I draw the contour for you, it kind of like in a rounded way scoops round to the metal as if it's kind of eating the metal or absorbing it. Does that make sense? Like the metal's been pushed into that organic design. I hope that makes sense. And all of them are like that, if you see. Even this one, you can see it's like that control has been embedded in that metal structure, in that organic shape. Maybe I should make this more like that. And I can keep the handprints too, maybe. I'm not sure. I don't really like the handprints for this design, but should give it a go. I have kind of a bit of an obsession with those handprints too. It's a bit like skulls. You just end up... Yeah, and it's a bit like the green glass screens and stuff. I think as artists, we kind of end up settling on... could call them cliches, could call them conventions. But we end up settling on similar tropes in artwork. And sometimes I try to avoid, but sometimes they're the same kind of tropes that, you know, millions of other artists settle on. You know, and that's how these kind of common universes are built. It's like they say, you know, you can't design a fantasy universe without having some influence from Tolkien or what have you. A lot of the time, someone's already done such an amazing job of, you know, designing a fantasy universe that it's impossible to not take inspiration from it if you've seen it. And then again, you get tropes that go back to ancient times, right? Like even like the idea of zombies and stuff like that. These are very old ideas. I think zombies are a very old idea anyway. There are definitely plenty of things that are very, very old ideas, like ancient ideas that are still used in art today. Quite a fun stream today. Do I blend this shape in? That's the question as well. Answer is probably yes. And again, I might round this up, make it look more organic. And you see this crevice here, it won't be relevant really till later, but this is going to catch some specular reflections very likely. Well, I mean, it's looking at the floor, so it probably won't, but what I'm trying to say is even when it comes to these specular reflections, like I was saying, very pointy areas on organic surfaces, they'll catch the specular reflections, right? but also it's exactly the same in the inverse, right? If you have a very sharp peak, this is a very sharp peak, and that's catching the specular reflections, but also a very sharp trough will catch the specular reflections in exactly the same way, but it'll mirror it. So it'll be upside down, if that makes sense. Along with the horizons catching more specular reflections. So there's just certain areas that will magnetize reflections towards them, if that makes sense. And they'll warp the reflections towards themselves. Go with some kind of shape like that. Get the metal of this painted in. See how it goes from there. Paint over my lovely handprints. Yeah, I like that shape. It's a bit too small for hands though, I feel like. At least looking at the size that I want people to be in comparison to this machine. One's a bit more asymmetrical than the last one, which I like. Or at least the controls on it are. Looks nice. It's one of the first times I've just streamed for a couple of hours and felt comfortable. Definitely the trick to do it in the morning. I think because I've been doing it a bit more often, it's been good. And I think because I'm painting something that I'm so comfortable painting lately, it's good. It's been hard for me to just find a good subject to paint during the streams. Something that doesn't feel monotonous or tedious. Which I've got to be honest, a lot of the stuff that I have been painting on my streams, it always ends up feeling like that. And it feels like that on steroids because I really struggle to concentrate. I do have concentration issues. So doing anything that's like doesn't feel like I'm constantly, like I'm comfortable, or doesn't feel like it's not tedious or monotonous in any way. It's hard. It's just hard. Try that pseudo pupil maybe. I think a hammerhead shape would be nice on its side, something like that. And it's going to be a bit stretched and warped because of the way the screen is stretched and warped. It'll look like that. Nah, it's a bit too ambitious, that is, and I don't understand it well enough yet. Although I would like to make this area of the monitor a little bit darker. Doesn't look good. See, I'm just trying random stuff and half the time it doesn't even work and I end up erasing it. That's one of the biggest things with painting that I feel like people struggle with is the intimidation, and it's like there's no need. You can see half of the stuff I'm trying doesn't even work, and it's just it doesn't matter in digital. There's no need to be intimidated in digital. Maybe when you are using more traditional techniques like oil or what have you, you can actually, you know what I mean, can mess things up a little more. But in digital, you can't. No excuse. That's why I say digital is the best medium to learn on, hands down, by miles. You just gotta treat it like you would oil, if that makes sense. Don't do any overcomplicated stuff. Don't be trying to find the perfect brush or whatever, just use a round brush. I mean, I always say as well, this brush that I use, it's one step from being a round brush. You know what I mean? It's like, and when I paint in Magma, it looks exactly the same. And in Magma, I use the round brush, so I know that using the round brush works. Incidentally, this brush is a little bit better than the round brush. I feel like, for me, I prefer it. It's a roller brush instead. You can get sharper corners with it. So you get that 90-degree angle. You can just, with the round brush, it makes every edge that you do round, and I feel like that can make things look a bit soft sometimes. This is just my take on a round brush, really. The roller brushes. See, I just robbed the colour from the thing on the side there. It didn't go very well though. I want to see if I can finish this one by the end of the stream. Might need to stretch my legs in a minute though. I've noticed a lot of the art streams on YouTube are like between 1.5 and 2 hours. But I used to watch, you know, some video gamers stream and stuff. They do like around 5 to 6 hours. That's kind of more where I want to be because my paintings are quite intense and quite long projects often. So doing like 5 to 6 hours of painting is like a dream to me. Being able to do that much painting. That means, you know, I could finish a 15-hour painting in like 3 streams. And most of my full paintings are like 15 hours. I don't do many quick paintings like the one shown at the bottom left corner right now. I do want to get back to doing faster paintings. That one was probably more like 2.5 hours. This one was just a sketch that's showing. See, that one's more like one of the 15-hour ones, and that one's not even finished and probably never will be. Just thought I'd get away with it because it's only small at the bottom of the screen. Painting takes time, that's the other thing that people always misunderstand. One is in digital, I think using a lot of shortcuts will work, or different brushes. And two is thinking that painting doesn't take much time. But, you know, I've been sat here for 2 hours and it feels like I've been sat here for 4, you know, just painting these. I mean, these are nice paintings. You get a nice result, but it's not a composition, is it? It's like just a prop. These are props that I'm painting, really. Oh. Music helps. This one's kind of more lit from the edges. So I'm literally just painting light onto both edges of that even. Some of that saturated colour in there too. I don't know what to do with these controls now. What to put on here. This one might be a good place for just some buttons. Something like that. I don't know. Maybe I should just put a big handle on it. I You see how I paint metal very lazily. Just with that high contrast. But you'll see it will end up looking pretty good. And it already looks kind of like metal. Put a little bit of a slot in the bottom. Yeah, something like that makes sense. Yeah, I just rubbed out a bunch of the work on that screen there. You can't be sentimental with stuff. You just gotta be prepared to try things out. I can always repaint it like that, and better. And if you don't get rid of that sentimentality and figure out how to just paint over stuff, even if you like it, just to try something different and just to see if it'll look better, you just won't end up being able to paint at all. Don't fall into that pitfall. Sorry. Alright. Might be time to smooth this out soon. I love the design of this one. I love the top heavy aspect of it. I love the idea of these solid, sturdy based ones that look like you couldn't push it over if you tried, you know, like even if you ran a bulldozer into it, it'd probably still, you know, come out on top. But I also love these ones that are like almost the complete opposite, where it's like a massive, heavy looking head on a, you know, but you know this bottom bit is probably anchored into the floor, so. And I just love the idea of it's for space, and because you can build whatever you want in space, but it better be, you know, sturdy. I just like the idea of it's like no compromises, no expenses spared. And like I say, I love the design of like 1930s kind of retro workshop equipment, mills and such. Might be too blurry that. You can see I'm not just going straight in and blurring stuff. There's really trying to treat it like a paintbrush. And a lot of that is because it smears as well, like I say. See, it looks a little worse now, but I know exactly what we need to do to bring it back to life. Or it looks better generally, but there's parts of it that look worse. Like this little spot here wants to be darker again, I feel like, and more saturated. What you can have happen as well with the blur brush is it can desaturate stuff because it's mixing the colours together, and when you mix colours together you'll always get closer to grey. Not always, but you know what I mean, very often it will make it closer to grey, which is why I paint most metallic objects as grey, because they're kind of blending what they're reflecting in the surroundings together, and when you blend it all together it just averages out into grey, right? There you go. It's always a bias for me, at least when I paint metal, to paint it more grey because of that effect. And again, we really like the goal here is to hide the brush strokes. Primary goal. We've got a nice base there, you see. Might as well do the little example eyeball in the side. There you go, you see how that looks like a compound eye? Let's not forget his little mohawk. That's kind of inspired by cars as well. You'll see that little silver thing on the bonnet with like Mercedes and stuff. The little charm, the little like chrome charm you get on a lot of car hoods. Excuse me. I want to keep making this look more and more 3D, more and more dramatic, and more dimensional. And when you pick colors as well, you can just pick them, but it's better to pick them and then make them a bit more saturated and a bit more exaggerated. Because obviously you're going to pick something that's a little desaturated, typically, from what you want, what your eyes are seeing. And it's already been mixed together a little bit on the canvas, which naturally, as we've been talking about, makes things more grey, makes them less saturated. See how adding that darker area has made it look more 3D. Love this really saturated area underneath quite a lot. I'm gonna play on that a bit more. Play on it there as well, I should. You see, I have done in the past, and I think it can work okay. But even though I'm working a lot with the airbrush right now, I don't dive in with the airbrush to start with. And that's because softer things are just harder to work with, trust me. Can't see them as easily. You can't make things out as well. With these softer things, you're really playing it a lot by feel. See, it looks pretty terrible right now. As far as the actual look goes, this isn't like publishable at all, but it's because it's all of this is quite blurry, and there's no sharpness to really for your eyes to lock onto. But once we get the specular reflections in, like we already have on this one, that gives us the sharp mixed with the soft, and it's nice, satisfying, you know. And that's why we tried when we was using the normal brush and sculpting it more like clay to give ourselves loads of texture to work with in different areas. Like in this screen, you can see there's loads of little lumps of lighter areas, and you know, and there's still some areas that I leave sharp at the sides and stuff. You want to give yourself plenty of abstraction to work with. The only time I've got it with the airbrush is on that blue console, one that I really liked. I'm not sure. I can't even remember if I did go in. I mean, I did a bit of both on that one. That was an Enigma. Right, yeah, I'm gonna call it X. My back's starting to hurt. But I think you guys get the point, and we've got something to work on next time we stream. It possibly might be later today because I've got work coming up, so I won't be able to stream for a few days after today. Unless it's like really quick streams in the evening, but I'll be knackered. It might not be worth it. But yeah, that was about 2.5 hours worth of painting work, which is nice. It's good for me. I think we came out with some pretty good results, and I think this one's going to make a nice time lapse, which I'll post now. So I figured out how to make these time lapse posts for my YouTube shorts pretty quickly, so this one will make a pretty good start. I might paint something on the screen before I do the time lapse as well. that'll be fun. All right, I'm gonna sign.